15.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the Iowa House, I think we all know how important education is. This is, in my opinion, the most important topic we'll ever discuss up here. Education is not only the majority of our state budget, it's also the area where the state of Iowa has the most intimate impact on the lives of Iowans and affecting their future for the rest of their lives. This amendment so I say the problem that I'm seeing in my community is, what happens when a public school district isn't performing well and is not responding to the needs of parents? Or I think more specifically for this chamber, what are we going to do when school districts are not adhering to state law? I think that's a pretty important discussion that we ought to have. So, I first got here in 2019. Back then, I thought there were some pretty interesting issues with student proficiency and are graduates able to read and write at a proficient level? Are they proficient with civics and U.S. history? And at that time, looking at the national proficiency ratings, no. There are many students who graduate without the necessary life skills to equip them for a good life. And I was very concerned about those issues back then. I remember in 2019, I took a vote against transportation equity funding because I thought we needed to be a lot more focused on how we could bring the classroom to the students in a remote learning setting. At that point, I didn't realize that the state would be forced into that direction a little more than a year later. And I know in my community, it didn't work very well precisely because we were not having those forward-thinking discussions. It seems to me like we're always responding to yesterday's problems, and we're really not putting in that time and effort that we need to properly evaluate these issues. And like I said, when education is the majority of the state budget, when it affects Iowans' lives so immensely, this really should be the majority of what we're doing up here, is really going in depth and examining these things. And I haven't really seen that. I haven't. When it comes to these positive student outcomes, ensuring proficient students, when it comes to the emotional and mental health of students, not just on the treatment side, but making sure they're not traumatized to begin with, we're not doing a good job at that. And I hate to say it, I have no joy in saying that, And all I ever hear is, yeah, there are some problems, but most public schools are doing a mostly good job most of the time. And that's great. I think it's so great that we have these great institutions that the public can rely on. But that doesn't give us an excuse to avoid the issues that are present. And it pains me. I know when I'm talking to constituents, when I'm talking to teachers' union advocates, these are not people who are very familiar with school finance. These are not people that are looking up the budget of their school district. These are not people who can discern between the Pepple and Pearl levy or really talk about the intricacies of school financing. And you'll ask them, I get it. And there is a need. There really is a need this year, and I'll get into that. But I'll ask someone, hey, how much money does it take? Give me a dollar amount, please. How much money do you specifically need per pupil to provide an excellent education? I think that's a fair question because when I'm shopping for other goods and services, there's usually a firm price. I'll never get an answer. Say, hey, do we need $10,000? Do we need $15,000? Do we need $20,000? Tell me how much money we need. I'll never get an answer. They'll only ever say more. We need more. We need more money. And we've given them a lot more money over the years. Billions of new dollars in education over this past decade. And again, I don't think we're necessarily seeing the results of that investment, at least not in my community. And that's not to put down or cast aspersions on all the wonderful students and all the wonderful educators who are doing amazing things. But there are a lot of students and Iowans who are slipping through the cracks. And I think that's why we have one of the lowest workforce participation rates in the Midwest, because we have young people without life's direction, with mental, emotional health issues, and they're not contributing to the good of our state. And I think that is a reflection of perhaps some issues we could address in our education system. Now, there is a need, right? And I think we'll acknowledge a lot of school districts are in a tough situation. Like I said, there's a lot of great teachers who deserve pay raises, teachers and educators who need pay raises just to keep up with the rising cost of inflation. But again, let's be honest, though, with the rampant inflation with no end in sight, is squabbling over 2.5% and 5% really going to make much of a difference when we have a CPI rate of 7.5% and the actual goods and service that people rely on, like food, are way higher than that, like 12 and 15% or more when we're talking about protein? So no matter what, this could completely become a moot point in a few months down the road, just on the inflation projections we're seeing right now. But again, if we wanted to talk about actually solving that, I think there's probably less of an interest in monetary policy than there is in understanding school finance, which again is unfortunate if we're wanting to respond and proactively serve Iowans. But so there is a need, because teachers need pay raises. They're entitled to that. They have contracts, and again, they need a pay raise just to keep up with the cost of living, but so does everyone else. And so what this amendment will do, biggest problem, yeah, we'll get there. Thanks, Hanson. So again, going back to the problem is, what does this legislative body do when we have school districts that are not adhering state law? And very, very important state laws too. A list of divisive concepts. Divisive concepts that when students are not properly educated in these critical concepts, it can cause a lot of damage. It can lead to depression. It can lead to emotional instability. When you think the world's against you and you're a victim and that you're a part of a society that's no good, that can really affect a person. So it's very important that House File 802 is enforced and that we honor the law of the state and that we take this seriously. The other area is obscene materials. There are a lot of books. I have some of them on my desk. I haven't heard any actual defense of these materials. I was talking with an educator in Iowa City. We don't agree on anything. He did agree that these materials were objectionable and probably shouldn't be given to kids. So I haven't seen any defense. I haven't seen any explanation of the artistic or literary or educational value of these materials. I think they're rather indefensible. They don't belong in schools. And Iowa Code 728 says they don't belong in schools. There's also the issue of mandatory masking, which unfortunately, due to certain advocacy groups and special interests, they're forcing our students to wear masks, even for whatever reason, I don't know. And I think, anyway, that's a whole other topic. I know time's short. Hopefully we'll talk about that a lot more. But basically what this amendment will do will provide a financial incentive for these school districts to honor the laws that we've enacted as a state. Because if critical race theory is so important to an educator, then maybe the solution is, okay, then maybe you just won't get a pay raise this year because maybe your school district isn't entitled to this 2.5% increase. So that's what this bill does, is saying that I don't want to put any taxpayer on the hook to fund a pay raise for an educator who is disrespecting parents, disrespecting students, and disrespecting the state of Iowa. They shouldn't get a pay raise. If they're found to be in violation of the law, they should not be eligible for this 2.5% increase. So that's the purpose of the amendment. Sorry it took me a little bit long to get there, but I know there's a lot to spell out, and this is a very emotional topic for me because I would love to support SSA. I would love to be a great partner for the public schools because I do see a lot of the great things, and I have a lot of really great school districts, and I have another school district that insists on violating state law and flaunting it and disrespecting parents. And I cannot go back home and tell those parents that I just gave all those people a pay raise with your tax dollars to give your kids obscene materials. I'm not willing to take that vote. So that's why I'm offering this amendment, so I could support the SSA bill and ensure that our school districts are adhering to Iowa law. So that's the gist of the amendment. I'm happy to entertain any questions or discussion. Thank you. Available for questions whenever you guys are ready. I think there are a lot of interesting things to talk about. And so seeing no discussion and understanding that there's a lot of work on these issues yet to do, and that hopefully we'll grow in recognition the importance of these issues, and hopefully we can get unanimous consent that at the very least we should have school districts adhering to state law. I think that's something everyone can agree with. So with that, I'll ask unanimous consent and withdraw my amendment.